So Record of Lotus War is based on the novel that I showed earlier, or it's based... The first half of this is based on that novel.
Oh, okay.
There are 7 novels in that series altogether. So far, they've only published that one. I really hope they publish the rest of them. It's only 7. That itself was based on something that apparently was popular in Japan, but not here, or I've never heard of it being popular here, called a replay, which is a novelization of a D&D game. And then the author took that and rewrote it to be more like an actual novel for the novel, and then it got turned into this. This is one of those animes that's like kind of fallen through the cracks that, like, from my understanding, was kind of important for a lot of early anime fans in the late 80s, early 90s. So I watched the first half of this more recently. One day I was like, hey, me and my friend should watch this, and I showed it to Matt just to show him like the first episode, and then we watched the entire first disc, which is half of the show.
Wow.
And then we never watched the second half. So I'm a little bit more familiar with the first half than the second half, which is unfortunate because the second half is a little bit better. But anyways, so it's a 13-episode OVA. I don't know if you know what an OVA is. It's original video animation, which is a thing that they do in Japan. Basically, it is... They came out on cassettes, now it's... Or on tapes, now it's DVDs. It's one feature that's... Sometimes it's in just normal episode, like I think these are like normal 20 episodes. But because they're OVAs, they release months apart, and they have a higher animation budget than a traditional serialized anime series.
Sure.
So these look great. I mean, for the time, all 13 of these look fantastic.
So that's what, late 80s or?
I think it's late 80s, maybe really early 90s, like 91, 92 maybe. I've always kind of... I love the series. I've loved it since I was a teenager when I found it. But I've always kind of thrown it under the bus whenever I explain it to people, where I'm like, so this comes from the period of time in fantasy where all anyone could do was Lord of the Rings, so much so that there is a dwarf...
It looks like that on the cover.
There's a dwarf in this named Gim.
Wow.
Once you get past kind of the archetypal stuff, which there's no way around given that this came from a D&D game.
Yeah.
You're gonna have that, like, group... Because I've always been like, yeah, it's a group of adventurers going after an evil artifact. I'm like, yeah, but how is he gonna do a D&D game? You only have so many classes you can pick from. That makes sense, given its source material. It's a little bit more human than I remembered it being. The characters have a little bit more motivation. They're a little bit more fleshed out than I recalled. I remembered it being really kind of standard fantasy, which is nice, because when you look around, while there are thousands of books in that model, outside of that, there's not a lot of stuff that actually represents the traditional fantasy genre. And this is maybe the purest form of that, when you get to the just kind of adventuring party fantasy kind of a thing. This is kind of what you're thinking of. But it is better than I remembered it being. And while it's a group of people going after an artifact, it is different enough from Lord of the Rings that I wouldn't actually throw it in the carbon copy. The artifact is... It is a corrupting device, but it's the spirit of an ancient witch that is on... Gim has a friend that's her daughter. She was like a witch, and she got this item, and it took over her, and then it takes over a different character later. Which is very subtly foreshadowed when you get a picture of all of the heroes minus one. And it's like, these are the heroes, and one of them will betray them. It's like, well, I wonder if it's the one that's missing from the picture. I wonder if that's going to be... Oh, it was the one missing from the picture.
I wonder who's going to die in Suicide Squad. Maybe the one that was in none of the advertising?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, and didn't have any scenes before his introduction.
That too.
It does the whole kind of epic fantasy battle thing really well, in that you have the big, like, you literally have a war at one point with, like, 2 armies going at each other, but it focuses on the characters that you care about. And it doesn't break the party like Lord of the Rings does. You don't have the main character off doing something over here while everyone else is doing this stuff over here. Like, it's a real tight narrative focused on its protagonist and his relationship with his father's legacy. His father was a great war hero who then, I forget if they ever reveal what he did. He did something that everyone hates him now. And so, like, he's living in the shadow of his father, both as a hero and as a hated man. And an over-romanticization of war and battle and kind of coming to terms with that a bit. I like it quite a bit. I was kind of surprised how much I liked it going back to it. I really expected... I threw it on because I got the other anime series.
Stuff is like too foundational.
Yeah.
You know, where it's like where it doesn't necessarily date well because we got too past it.
Yeah, well, and things that felt, I think at the time, like, when everything was a Lord of the Rings ripoff, it was a little bit harder to, like, when the first couple of those came out, I'm sure it was like, well, we just have more fantasy. This is what fantasy is like.
Yeah.
And we had to have a period of that before you could get kind of the revisionist fantasy, where we got a little bit darker, more complex, things like that. This has more of that going on than I realized.
Yeah, there's zombie stuff that would be hard to go back to now because of all the stuff we've done with zombie stuff.
Yeah.
For instance. This
holds up better than a lot of the more foundational fantasy stuff, I think. Especially things like Dragonlance or the first Drizzt trilogy. It's not being innovative or doing anything new, but it's a story well told, which is more important to me.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to reinvent the wheel, and at 13 episodes, it's still shorter than the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
And probably feels shorter than the animated Lord of the Rings movies.
I like the Hobbit one. Actually, I like both of the Rankin Bass ones. It's that middle one that's awful.
They creep me out a little bit.
Ralph Bakshi... Well, only Lord of the Rings is rotoscope. The other ones look like Rankin Bass cartoons.
There's still something about that always put me off.
Also, hats off to the man that wrote the song about the goblins whipping their slaves.
I must have missed that one.
The song...
Maybe I only saw the Hobbit one. I can't remember.
I like the Hobbit one. The Lord of the Rings one is really boring. Which might be the one you saw.
It is the one. Yeah, that is the one I saw.
And then Return of the King. So it's weird because like Rankin Bass makes the Hobbit. They make Lord of the Rings, which is half of that story. And apparently we're supposed to say part one. They're like, no, don't put part one. No one will see it. And he's like, everyone's going to think it's the whole story. It's not the whole story. It doesn't do well. And then Rankin Bass finishes it and does Return of the King and just does the other half of it. There's a point where there are goblins whipping slaves, singing a song called "Where There's a Whip, There's a Way."
That's amazing.
It's amazing.
What?
This is relatively easier to get a hold of. This copy is out of print, but I think you can get this for cheap. And they also something must be happening where they're doing a big push for this, because the book just came out, but they also just re-released this series on Blu-ray, and there's a larger Blu-ray set that has this series and the anime series that I just purchased. But the anime series is not on Blu-ray. So it's a Blu-ray set, but only half of it's in Blu-ray. And nowhere on the packaging does it tell you that.
That's really strange.
Yeah.
I've never seen that.
But it should be... And the cover for those Blu-ray sets...
That would also be a weird thing to pick up and read on a Blu-ray set, where it's like where there's an asterisk, like disc 1 to 2.
Yeah.
Blu-ray, disc 3 to 6. DVD.
And that new release and that book share a similar spine, so I'm wondering if somebody got the licenses trying to do a big push for that.
Sure,
I hope people rediscover this. I think it's kind of a forgotten gem. Like, anytime it ever comes up, it's always people like, I remember watching this when I was a kid in the 90s.
Well, it sounds like it's really significant.
Yeah, and it's kind of foundational for a lot of fantasy anime and stuff. If you like that kind of stuff, if you like the really traditional fantasy stuff, I would recommend this. It's quite good. And it's not as cookie cutter as I thought it was, or as I remembered it being. There's some really cool dragons. There are both Dungeons and Dragons in this.
Wow.
Which is not a given with anything based on Dungeons and Dragons. My one major complaint is everyone should skip the first episode.
Oh, interesting.
The first episode is in media res of them in a dungeon fighting monsters. Now, I understand that when you're releasing these tape by tape, the first episode doesn't have a lot of action, and you want to let people know, like, it's coming. But it's one of those in media res things where, like, when we get to the dungeon, I'm not actually sure where in that episode 1's supposed to go, and you don't miss anything. So I recommend everyone treat this like a 12-episode series and just skip the first episode.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, Lotus War, people should check it out if they like fantasy. That's all I got to say.
Well, there's a part of me that almost wish you'd talked longer about that, just so that I could stall and...
I can talk about Swords and Armor. Do you want to hear about Swords and Armor?
No, it's cool. We have other things to do in the omnibus, so I guess now's the time, and I'm seizing the day. So I'm going to talk about the second half of Season 1 of Star Trek Discovery, which...
Star Trek and Discovery. Both of those could have quotation.
Both of those could have quotation marks, yeah. Which was just absolutely baffling. I guess not as baffling as it should be, because the first half of the season is so counterintuitive, and and insane and not Star Trek. And so like I like there's stuff I'm not surprised by that like I'm like Alexi and a couple other people like I'm hearing like kind of surprised by just how insanely bad it
But
gets.
It seems that you checked out and have given up on it being Star Trek.
I have checked out. That's my whole thing. Like I can't get. And the thing is, if it could turn around, which sounds real laughable now, but if it were possible to salvage this and it turn around, like I'm as open to that as I possibly can be, but I'm still not expecting it to ever like actually make sense and feel like Star Trek and not just feel like a really poorly written fan fiction, and that's what it is. And so like I can't get outraged with like how dare you do that in Star Trek. I'm like, well, I'm already like how dare they started on a faulty premise and the whole universe revolves around this one character. And we've talked about this, but the cool thing about this show was supposed to be that it's about just a crew member on the ship. That and like not the captain and not the person that everything revolves around, and you have this you have this character Michael Burnham who can just do whatever the script needs her to do, and she's always right except it's supposed to be a road to redemption story. And so where we get to at the end of this of the season. And I mean, it feels like we fit like 4 seasons into one show, and not in a good way. It's not dense in the way you would want this to be dense, and it's also dense in the bad way, because it's really dumb. I mean, it gets really dumb. I'm going to start talking about specifics at some point, but I'm still stalling.
Because you seem a little emotional about this. Maybe you're not completely checked out.
It's because I don't want to have to talk about it. Like, I don't want to give it the service of giving it attention and talking about it. Like it's really difficult for me not to just say, yeah, it's bad, don't look at it. And like I'm thorough review guy. I have to back up my points and whatever. But I don't want to give it the time of day. It's embarrassing. And like I'm embarrassed for it. I don't want to talk about a thing that I'm embarrassed for. That's just how I feel about it. So if you enjoyed this show, I apologize, and you should skip this part because I don't like anything about it. There's some production value stuff that's really cool. There's some nice, pretty-looking things to look at. It is a horribly written show. Through and through, all the way through. So anyway, where we get to at the end of this season is Michael Burnham has gone through apparently this character arc where she's learned that she was wrong at the beginning and Starfleet really shouldn't ever fire first. You remember that whole thing? And that she was wrong to try to start that mutiny, and so when Starfleet en masse gets to the same place that she was on just the bridge of a ship, she teaches them how to be altruistic and caring and not want to commit genocide of an entire race. And she's learned the Starfleet principle to the point where she has to teach them how to be Starfleet again. And considering through the entire season she's had to constantly like she always knows best, and she is this has become like a bad buzzword lately, but like she's basically a Mary Sue, right? I mean, she is kind of that.
That's what I thought from the couple episodes I watched. She's good at everything. She's the most important person. She's the bestest there's ever bestest.
Yeah. Well, they just and the Mirror Universe version of her apparently was also that way. But anyway, so like after all of that, it's really hard to swallow a redemption story with her. And the last thing on Earth I want to listen to is a platitude-laden speech from her about Starfleet's principles. The first half of this season, it feels like, for the most part, it feels like the show doesn't really want to do Star Trek, doesn't get Star Trek, and is trying to, and is like overcompensating with darkness because people think of Star Trek as this like really boring, wholesome thing, and it's got to win over people that like this more cynical, rough and tumble, kind of science fiction. And then, at some point, it kind of realizes, oh, some people aren't like buying into that, and Starfleet is this altruistic organization that's all about finding a way for people to get along, and infinite diversity, infinite combinations. We should probably at least occasionally say that. And so a lot of the second half, and they start to do that toward the end of the first half, a lot of the second half is a lot of like tell don't show about that, where it's, we go to the Mirror Universe for 4 episodes, and there's not enough of a sense of contrast, because I'm already in a world that is foreign to me as far as Star Trek goes. And I don't mean that it has to be rainbows and puppy dogs all the time, and that's not original series, and there's a lot of like creepy, scary stuff that happens in the original series, but you always get the sense that your heroes are heroes, and they like at least want to get along, and they think about morality and ethics. These people talk about that stuff a lot, but they don't but they don't actually in their actions uphold Starfleet's ideals, and they kind of a lot of the time feel like they all hate each other. And I know I've talked about that before, but that kind of continues, and then every now and again you'll have these weird, like really jarring moments where they're laying on too thick how much these characters are kind of supposed to like each other, and they never feel like real people. It's always just in a scene, like, we're going to compensate for this stupid thing that doesn't work, and now we're going to compensate for this stupid thing that doesn't work.
It really sounds like they heard the reaction of the first half of the season.
Yeah. And they don't know how to fix that. And it's like that BVS thing where it's just superficially we'll address it, but we don't actually think there's anything wrong. It feels like that, right? Okay, so we go to the Mirror Universe, and now I'm going to start talking about plot stuff. So we go to the Mirror Universe, and it becomes plot twist after plot twist after plot twist, where now we're trying to excite people by doing stuff they'll never see coming.
It's like Hero Season 3.
Yeah, it's a lot like that, but in a show that like
never had Hero Season 1?
Yeah, that I can't compare things like that. Anyway, so when we go to the Mirror Universe, we immediately... I'll run through this as quick as I can. I kind of want to just give a plot synopsis, because the badness is inherent in the synopsis, and it's hard to imagine that somebody actually put this on television, so I'm just going to tell you what happens in some of the stuff. So, yeah, so here's what happens. We go to the Mirror Universe, and that's where we ended up jumping to at the end of the mid-season. When I thought we were just somewhere lost in space, I was kind of hoping we wound up in the Prime Universe, but apparently that's still where we're supposed to be. And so we wind up in the Mirror Universe, and the first big plot point that we discover... Well, before I get to the first big plot twist, I should mention that we conveniently stumble upon another ship as soon as we get there from the Mirror Universe, in the Mirror Universe, where we're able to learn everything we need to about this new universe so that we can blend in. And we do that immediately, and we make the outside of the hull look like a look like a Terran vessel, and we figure out like all the dossiers of all the characters, and the girl that was what is her name? Tilly. You remember Tilly?
I remember Tilly.
She is apparently this evil badass warlord in the Mirror Universe, and so she has to very quickly learn how to act like that, and she figures that out way too fast, and it's supposed to be this character building thing for her so she can build some confidence, but what she ends up doing later on in the season is she just turns it on and off. So she will act like normal Tilly, but then when she has to turn that on, she can just turn it on, and it doesn't look like she actually really grows or builds that much into her personality. She just, it's a light switch. But yes, I had the same thought. Oh, of course. So we immediately have to start doing irritating prequelitis stuff that even Enterprise avoided with the Mirror Universe. But Enterprise did Mirror Universe. We just went to the Mirror Universe for a couple of episodes. We didn't actually have it affect the regular universe because we'd never been there before. But what this show does is it has us go to the Mirror Universe and then and make it so that people have already been there and back before. and then come up with an excuse so that nobody finds out about it later. And I'm jumping ahead, but did I tell you what that stupid excuse is?
Isn't it just that they tell everyone not to say anything?
Yeah, but the motivation for it was what was ridiculous. When they get back, the Admiral finds out about the Mirror Universe, and I think it's the Admiral who says this. Who, by the way, I think it was her bright idea for Klingon genocide right after that. She's like, oh, well, we have to make sure that we wipe this from all the records. Because if anybody, and this will play into something that Burnham does with the Emperor, but I'm getting ahead of myself. If anybody finds out that there's this other universe, they'll try to figure out how to go there so they can visit loved ones they've lost. That's the reason we have to wipe it from the records. Like, people won't be able to control themselves.
If that's...
And they'll all try to figure out how to get over there.
While that's dumb, that feels like that would make more sense if that was the reason they ended up there in the first place. Was like, if Lorca was trying to get there the whole time to get to his dead wife or something.
That'd be great.
And then you're like, okay, well, we don't want anyone else to do
but
this.
It'd be better. Yeah. But it's just an excuse to go to the Mirror Universe because we want to make a dark Star Trek show, but we're already doing a thing that, by contrast to some other Star Trek, looks too much like the frickin' Mirror Universe to me. To the point where you had some fans at the beginning saying maybe this is the genesis of the Mirror Universe, which of course makes no sense because we already had that in 22nd Century with Enterprise. And it would be weird if the Mirror Universe starts to exist just 10 years before TOS. But anyways, so we figure out all of how the Mirror Universe works, and we start to blend in. And we find out later that the Mirror Discovery has traded places with us. And I forget what exactly happens to it, but it traded places with us, and we do every permeation of how we get to and from the Mirror Universe. And one thing I wanted to like was they start doing continuity stuff, and and one of the things they discover very quickly, and I wouldn't think that this would be just in a database, but they found out about it real fast, is that you had well, no, I guess it sort of works. Anyway, the Defiant from the Tholium Web, which winds up in the past, but in the Mirror Universe, in a Mirror Darkly in Enterprise, they read about that, and they're like, well, we need to figure out how that ship got, like how that accident happened so that we could reverse it and use that to get back to our universe. And they find out that ultimately that's impossible, and that they would blow themselves up if they did that, so they can't they can't use that whole thing, so they're stranded, and they're trying to figure out how to get back. And they discover that the Emperor in the Mirror Universe, not Empress, but Emperor, they call her the Emperor, is Captain Giorgio. Because again, of course it is. Like, it's another one of those things where they...
You don't cast Michelle Yeoh for 2 episodes.
Yeah, and they think it plays for great drama because Michael Burnham feels horrible about getting her killed. And so we have to, again, do this forced drama thing where now she has this chance to redeem herself with a living version of her, even though it's not the same person, and she's a horrible human being, of course, because she's the she's the Terran Emperor, and you see her eat people because Saru's race, apparently they're like a delicacy in the Mirror Universe, and so they just keep doing all this innuendo about cannibalism through the rest of the season. And, yeah.
Star Trek.
It's great. Yeah, Star Trek. So, and again, you can get us to some of these sorts of things.
Especially in the Mirror Universe.
Especially in the Mirror Universe. But again, there's not enough contrast. And there are places, to be fair, where they're kind of having fun with the fact that they're in the scary universe. And I like a lot of the visuals. It's weird because the uniforms all look like Man of Steel Krypton uniforms, but some of that I want to love, but like while they're trying to be all like have kind of TOS fun with some of that, they're also taking themselves way too seriously and just doing a lot of gag me with a spoon stuff. So let me get to the plot twists. The first big plot twist is the guy that's the love interest for Michael Burnham that they got off the Klingon ship is this weird fusion. I don't even totally understand how this works, between him and Voke, who was the albino Klingon guy who was supposed to be the torchbearer of Takuvma. And it's not like we made him think that he was human, and that because at first I thought it was this interesting thing where it was this human who was actually Klingon who was created to think he was human, but all of that was a lie. No, they both existed, and they grafted them onto each other, which seemed like a weird move, and I wasn't totally sure why exactly they did that. Like, if they were able to, take like memory engrams and do from a guy who actually existed and like make him think he was that guy as a sleeper agent, like, I guess that would kind of make some sort of sense, but it felt really convoluted the way they grafted them onto each other. I didn't really understand how even that whole thing worked. And Michael Burnham spends, once she finds out about it, she spends the whole rest of the season being way harder on him than anybody else is, I guess just because, like, they were in love, A, and B, Klingons killed her parents, so revenge. And it's just really soap opera-esque, and it's really melodramatic. So that's the first big plot twist, which just feels like really tacked on plot twist. And I'm not saying that they didn't know it the whole time, but it just felt like, well, now we need a big plot twist.
I mean, they wouldn't have made a big deal out of that guy and then killed him off as quickly as they did if they didn't have a plan.
No, that's
for him
true.
Somewhere.
And I'm not saying that's not an interesting idea initially. I just don't like how it ends up playing, and I really hate that human guy, because I forget his name right now, because he spends, like, every time he's on screen, he's just throwing out platitude after platitude, and he's never really, like, talking like a person and saying real things, and it's really irritating. And in the last episode, he has this really obnoxious, like, I know how much you love these, like a literal metaphor where he's tying a knot, and he says that when he learned from I forget who, from someone when he was a kid, how to tie this knot, that's like the thing that like the first thing he remembers that makes him like an individual and like who he is, and that ties him to his past. And that's what passes for subtext in this show.
Gag me with a spoon.
Yeah, they did that. It was great, right? So then the next big plot twisty thing is that, and this is just going to be hard to say out loud, some of this, is that I haven't even gotten to the last episode yet, which is like insane. Like how they win the war. Because they win the war in like 2 episodes. They get back from the mirror universe. I'm jumping all over the place. I don't know how to talk about the show like logically. It's just I don't.
Well, they didn't write it that way.
I don't want
to.
I don't want to do this. I hate this show, and I hate that I hate this Star Trek show. But it's not. It's not good. Anyway, so last 2 episodes, they win the war when they come back from the mirror universe. The Klingons have taken over most of a lot of the Federation, and they're like really desperate, and they're in really, really bad shape, because for some reason there's like a time displacement thing when they come out of the mirror universe. I'm not totally sure how that works, where it's like 7 or 9 months or something after they went into the mirror universe, and they weren't there to help Starfleet win the war, and they didn't have their spore drive, and so the Klingons are winning, but we find a really easy way to win the entire war in 2 episodes. Really, 1 episode.
Do we tear down the spore drive?
Nope. They still have it at the end.
Okay.
They meet the Enterprise at the end, and they still have the spore drive. Yep. So, just wait till I get to that whole thing. So anyway, I'm going to do this as fast as I can. I know I've been talking for a while. But I don't know how to discuss this show. So anyway.
I wish I could help you.
But you don't. But you don't. So, so the second big plot twist is that Lorca is from the mirror universe from the beginning, which did read like a complete afterthought, and there's no way they knew it from the beginning of the show. There's no way. And the goofiest thing, talking about literal metaphors, the most insane thing, did I tell you about this, that they do, the thing with his eyes?
Yes! You did tell me about this.
So you remember how we found out in the 3rd episode, that's as far as you watched, that Lorca, or maybe you watched 1 or 2
I watched
after that.
4.
Lorca but you didn't get to this part, because that was the first Mud episode. Lorca claimed that the reason his eyes were messed up was because he saw a ship blow up in a bright light, and he was a coward and he let everybody die on his ship, and so it made him, it made him so that he can't see light, and so he's like this dark character that can't see light. That was already kind of dumb.
Well, it's that thing in Hero Season 3 when Tyler was Nathan's was the Petrelli brother, but then he wasn't. Where it's like, no, you didn't convince me of that. I just thought you were that dumb. It's not a twist when it's not that, because I just went along with it because I thought you were that dumb. You didn't dupe me.
Yeah, no, exactly. Where I'm like, well, and the thing is, when we find out what it really is, it's just as stupid. It's actually stupider. Is that the only genetic difference between humans in our universe and the mirror universe is that they have a visual aversion to light, and that's the reason that Lorca has that.
You think that would have come up in Mirror Mirror?
That's a really good point. Yeah, and so that's, I don't know, it's ridiculous. And so it turns out that Lorca was just trying to get, I guess it was that, and again, like, I'm not invested in this at all. If I get details wrong, that's why. He gets, that just tells you what watching this was like. So he gets Michael Burnham. And he, the spore drive thing was all just this really convoluted way to get him back into the mirror universe, and apparently, remember how I said we did every possible way to get in and out of the mirror universe? His was a transporter accident, like it is in mirror universe with the other Lorca, I guess. I'm assuming that he's still alive so that we can bring that actor back and use him in the second season, because I assume we're going to keep coming up with reasons to bring people back, and bring back at least actors. And so, I guess he just wanted Michael Burnham because he's obsessed with her, because she's the coolest person in the galaxy, apparently, so he has to be obsessed with her.
And in the mirror galaxy.
Yeah, and so he's in love with her and stuff, and it's really soap opera. And so so they go back there, and then like I said, Michael Burnham finds the Emperor, and she at the end of all of this, when they finally figure out how to get back, she has the opportunity to just let the Emperor die in a firefight. And I'm skipping some stuff, but whatever. I gotta get to the last episode.
Wait, can I ask a question about Lorca real quick?
Sure.
Okay.
If I remember.
So
it.
Everyone on Discovery hates Lorca, except for that one chick that they do those visual nods, at least in the episodes I watch, where I assume she's still alive, but she's his right hand man.
I don't know who we're talking about right now.
There's a chick that was his second, and gave Michael Burnham a bunch of crap.
Are you talking about the Admiral, or I'm not sure who you're talking about?
Maybe she was also on Discovery. She was the one that's in the room when they have the force field with the monster. And or did she get killed? She must have gotten killed.
Yeah. No.
I told her. I was gonna ask her. I was like, is she also from the mirror universe?
No.
Okay, so she was just a bad person and dumb.
So,
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're fine. I appreciate the reprieve. So anyway, I don't want to think about this stuff again. So anyway, we get the Admiral, or excuse me, the Emperor, Giorgio, back over to our side, to the regular universe, because Burnham feels too bad about what she did to the other Giorgio, so she just has to save her and bring her back to our universe, which seems like the worst possible idea. And so it's really just a totally selfish, choice on her part. And it's really easy to just be like, well, of course she feels bad about that and she just can't help herself. I'm like, yeah, I'm not buying it. Anybody that she kills in our universe is on Burnham after that. It's not the same person. There's having feelings, and then there's acting on them. This is not a heroic character. She's just getting people killed again. How has she learned anything, right? So, this is where everything goes really insane. This is where the shark jumping show jumps the shark after it's already jumped the shark. So we come back. I've got to break some of this down. So in the last episode of the season, or I guess second to last, when we get back to our universe with the Discovery, and Saru and the Admiral actually believe that they can dupe everyone on the Discovery that has been to the mirror universe and knows what that is. That the Emperor is the real Giorgio, and that they just found her somewhere and she wasn't dead. And that none of them would ever think, oh, wait a minute, maybe that's the mirror Giorgio. Like, even if they didn't know about the Emperor, how are they buying that? And when Saru, there's this transporter chief when they beam over, and this is the scene where we do a site-to-site transport 2 feet in front of a transporter pad. Saru tells the transporter chief that he's not to reveal what she is under pain of treason. There's no contrast from our universe to the mirror universe if someone is threatening that it is treason. If you do, like, that's breaking orders and bad, but treason?
Yeah, especially because it's entirely emotionally driven choice in the first place. Like, it's not like it's top secrets that like could like affect the galaxy and the standing of Starfleet, and other than putting Michael Burnham back in jail for being an idiot.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, it was emotionally driven. You know what got her there in the first place, but like Saru doesn't even know much of that yet. It's just, oh, she's here on the transporter pad. Like, don't let anybody know about that. And then they actually expect everyone to believe that she's that she's our version of Giorgio. That's really stupid. Then it gets way stupider because the Admiral puts Giorgio after an episode in charge, like puts her in the captain's chair. This alien eating, like, despot from another universe, just because they're desperate to win the war, and she knows stuff about Kronos. It's a different Kronos! How do you know you can trust? First of all, how do you know that she's telling the truth? Second of all, how do you know that anything she says has any bearing on your universe? Okay, so they're on the bridge, and Giorgio is barking orders and is clearly from the mirror universe because she's telling people to, like, hate their enemies and stuff, and it's just really obvious that she's evil, and from this evil universe they were all at, you know, where people can't look at light because they're evil. And then inexplicably Burnham just starts trying to out her there on the bridge, knowing that that Burnham has been, or that, excuse me, that Giorgio has been ordered as as effectively the captain right now. And by the way, there's a vacancy in the captain's chair because we lost Mirror Lorca because we kill him off. I didn't talk about that, but we kill him off. So let me get this straight. 45 minutes before you're about to tell me that she's learned this grand lesson and has to reteach Starfleet how to be Starfleet and have their ideals, she's effectively trying to commit mutiny again, and it just doesn't work, so it's okay. And I don't know what her motivations are for trying to do that, because it's like, oh yeah, I don't like that you're the captain right now, because you're this evil, murdering, horrible despot.
That you're the reason, that I'm the reason you're here.
But, and I'm the reason that you're here, but what exactly would it benefit, like, how would it benefit Burnham for everyone to know that? So what she does is she tries to do that thing where she asks her a question that only the regular Giorgio should know, and for no reason that they give us, she knows where she's from, or at least makes up something that people buy. They don't actually tell us.
Well, yeah, because no one on that crew
know.
is from Giorgio's ship.
Saru is. So he would maybe know.
But he already knows, right? Because he told the guy...
He already knows.
Yeah.
So that doesn't matter. Yeah.
That affects no one on that ship, because none of them were on her ship.
So then they go out in the hallway, and Giorgio tells her not to try to out her again, or, you know, such and, you know, whatever I'm gonna... she doesn't even threat. It's an empty threat. She's just like, you know, don't do that again. And then from then on, she's reluctant, but Burnham just goes with it. She never tries to do that again. I have no idea what her motivation was for doing that in the first place. Okay, so then,
that's the same motivation for stopping.
Yeah. So they go to Kronos, and they use the spore drive, and they get to Kronos, and they beam down into this area that's run by the Orions. Apparently, the Klingons have a deal with them, and they let them take over some part of their planet. It's all slummy and messed up, and they do a whole thing with like drugs into drug culture, and they come up with an excuse to have Tilly take drugs because they think that's funny, and they do this.
Was this Transformers 2?
Yeah, and they do this thing where she gets high, and that's supposed to be a funny comedic beat or something. Long story short. I'm
so glad this is the Star Trek that got to use the F-bomb.
Yeah, she Giorgio, evil alien-eating whatever Saru's race is, evil, despotic Giorgio, goes to the center of Kronos with a bomb and is gonna blow up Kronos or make it uninhabitable or so, kill everybody on Kronos.
What is Giorgio's motivation? Just kill everything in front of me? Why does she care?
I guess it's just so that she can live in a Klingon-free society that maybe she can try to take over after that, is the best thing I can come up with. Yeah, it would almost make more sense if she tried to join up with them and take them over or something. I don't know. I'm not honestly totally sure what her motivation is. I think she hates Klingons. I guess there's that, but it's like another universe's Klingons. But nobody seems to be able to tell the difference between people that look exactly the same and people who are obviously completely different people because they're from other universes and they've had totally different experiences. So anyway, she goes down with the bomb, and at first I'm thinking, oh, she has a total other plan of her own. No, it's that whole compartmentalization thing where the Admiral has intentionally given her a bomb and wants her to try to commit genocide. Here's why this is dumb. The Klingons have already taken over so much that even if you killed everyone in Kronos, that would be a blow to them, but you wouldn't win the war. There's still plenty of them in space, and they, have, some of your outposts and stuff. It seems like it's just a bad strategic move and really unethical, all at the same time.
This is Starfleet.
Yeah, but we're supposed to buy that they've been driven to this because they're so desperate, except we didn't see them get there because we were gone for 9 months because of time travel something. So
and the war's been in the background for the entire show anyways, from what I saw.
Yeah, so they've had that female Klingon in their brig for episodes and episodes. I haven't talked about her, but she's the one who created the hybrid with the human guy and the albino Klingon, and she and Voq were lovers. And anyway, she ends up. She ends up deciding to help end the war because what happened is the 24 Klingon houses they've taken over, but they're not unified anymore, so they're still having sort of like a civil war amongst themselves, and she wants to unify the houses again. So here's what she does. We get her beamed down. I guess she's working with Burnham. If memory serves, we get her beamed down, and she gets the bomb away from Giorgio, and then she goes to the Council of the Klingon people, and she basically turns into Bane from Dark Knight Rises, and she holds them at bomb point, and she says, if you guys don't get along, I'm gonna blow you all up. And so then they just agree to get along, because she's holding a bomb.
That's a lasting piece.
And then Starfleet acts like the war is over and the peace will last. And then Burnham gives a speech about how important Starfleet ideals are. And then everybody applauds. And then at the end of the episode, they go to warp because they can't use the spore drive right at this very moment. I guess they've used it up or whatever. And then as they're warping, they get a signal, right? And then there's numbers that start popping up on a console, and they make a really big deal out of it, and it's really stupid that they would come up like this, like it's bingo, and it's like 1701. Oh my God, we're gonna see the Enterprise, and the Enterprise shows up, and then it's
I'm
like,
sure
oh,
it looks exactly like the old Enterprise.
and it doesn't, and people are complaining about that, but we're lucky it's shaped like that at all, you know? We're lucky that the nacelles are anything like in the right place, and that it's shaped like that saucer. And then they're like, oh, Captain Pike is hailing. And then it goes to credits. And we don't even know why they're there. Like, they don't even set up any kind of an actual cliffhanger. It's just, we saw the Enterprise, the end, they have no idea what they're doing and where they're going, right? And I half expect the next season to be of a completely different tone and flavor. And then over the credits, they have the audacity to do the TOS theme. Over the credit, after this monstrosity and this thing that, like, they just keep like screaming the whole time about, like, you know, unity and friendship or whatever, peaceful cohabitation, but you don't actually see that play out, and and then they're just like, oh, and now it's this fun science fiction adventure show, because that's what it sounds like in the credits. Oh, it's insane.
Should the president watch the show?
No. The president should not watch it. I can't even with the show, Eric.
Okay, so I have a question.
And again, I couldn't get outraged the way Alexi did, but I also, like didn't even want
to
dignify it with talking. Yeah, because doesn't it sound like the worst thing ever?
It sounds like the worst thing ever. Okay.
Like I'm sorry again for anybody that actually enjoyed this. I don't get it. Like people are not acting like people, and it reads like really terrible fan fiction. And I don't know how you pitch this in a writer's room and people don't just laugh you out. Like,
would you rather rewatch this or season 1 Enterprise?
Enterprise, because Enterprise is boring, but at least it's got some scripts that are coherent. Like, no, Enterprise is heads and tails above the show.
Because that's the bad one.
But yeah,
for people that don't know Star Trek, that's the bad one.
But it's run by the same people who made good Star Trek before, so they at least understand it.
They're just burnt out.
They're just burnt out. Yeah, I'd rather watch burnout Star Trek than whatever this is.
Than Burnham Star Trek?
I'm sorry for talking that long. I didn't know how to do that concisely, and there's stuff I didn't even get into, and but it's the worst thing I saw last year and into this year. Like, I'd rather watch Ragnarok.
Ghost in the Shell?
Yeah,
last
maybe.
night?
I mean, like...
See, you're having my Last Jedi thing.
These things are offensive in different ways. Yeah, but I mean, I'd certainly rather watch Last Jedi. But Last Jedi wasn't unwatchable. I just didn't like it. You know what I mean? But this, like, it's unwatchable. I'm sorry. I just think this is the worst thing. I really, really dislike it. Let's...
Your pain brings me joy.
Let's go ahead and move on. Thanks a lot for watching this absurdly lengthy Primetime Crisis. You got to see the opposite spectrums of me talking about a show I think is magnificent and me talking about a show that I think is... You know what? I would watch at least an episode or two of this over Maleficent. I would do that, but not the whole season.
Is Maleficent better acted?
Yeah, but I mean, the acting wasn't really the problem with that movie, you know. Exactly. I mean, she's great. But whatever. If you're watching this as his own video, thanks so much for watching. Sure appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed watching me lose my mind. And now we're gonna go on to something completely different.